Good morning, everyone. So lovely to be back here with you today. Wanted to share when Reverend Rick said, "Oh, I'm going to be speaking about Kwanzaa," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what kind of a song am I going to pick for that?" So this song actually was inspired by a story that I read about an African tribe that did not believe in the traditional discipline of children when they go astray or they make mistakes. Their belief was that when someone strayed or made a mistake or misbehaved, that it was because they forgot who they were. And every child, they believe, was born with an innate song. And so when that child would misbehave, they would bring them into the center of the village. Everyone would surround them and sing that person's song back to them. In essence, singing them home. So this is a song called Sing You Home. And the chorus is pretty catchy, so I'm going to inspire you to sing along with us. Your first cry was a symphony, voice that spoke so fearlessly, saw the world through eyes of wonder, brave and sure and full of hunger. I remember when we were young, wide-eyed innocence, born to run. Years have passed, your faith has faded. Lead you astray. If you get lost on your way, I will sing you home to me. Sing when you get lost in yesterday. I will sing you home to me. I know there were times that brought you pain, hiding shadows in fear of shame. Let my love be your northern star. I see who you really are. You get lost on your way, on your way. I will sing. I will sing you home to me. When you get lost in yesterday, when you get lost in yesterday, I will sing you home to me. No, you will never be forgotten. Your name is written on my heart. When the sea skies have darkened, listen Listen, listen, oh, listen for your song. Sing it. You get lost on your way. I will sing you home to me. You home. You get lost in yesterday. I will sing you home to me. Once again, you get lost on your way. I will sing you home to me. I will sing you home to me. I will sing you home to me.
Do you feel like you've been sung home? Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Kristen. Today we're finishing our series on the seasons and celebrations of light. And so today I am talking about Kwanzaa. And our talk title is The Principles and Symbols of Kwanzaa. Some of you may not understand or know much about Kwanzaa. And so I'm glad you're here because I'm going to educate you a little bit. If you're not familiar with this holiday, it could be because it's a fairly new holiday. Kwanzaa was developed in 1966 by Mr. Maulana Karenga. He was a professor in California. He's also an artist, an activist, a philosopher. And he created this holiday in order to honor African heritage. As Ali told us, the holiday begins on December 26th, and it runs for 7 nights until January the 1st. It culminates in a feast and in gift giving. Kwanzaa also has 7 principles. You heard those principles as Ali went through them earlier, and I'm going to tell you a little more about each principle and what that might mean for us as we look in at this holiday. This is one of the things that I love about our philosophy, religious science, because we get to honor and be open to all these different holidays and celebrations from all different faith traditions, all different activities going on in the world, and we get to drop in and see, what does this mean for us? What kind of meaning is there for us as we look at this particular holiday, whatever it might be? So I'll be expounding on the different principles for Kwanzaa. Each principle has a Swahili word that describes it. Since most people, and even African Americans, for the most part, don't speak Swahili here in the United States, I'm not going to focus on the Swahili word because they're really difficult for me to pronounce. But the principle that's behind that word is what's important for us. The principle and the celebration of what it can mean for us. And that's what's important to look at today. During Kwanzaa, as it was said, a candle is lit each night. Usually this is a family celebration, so families come together and the children are given the opportunity to light the candles for Kwanzaa each day, lighting a new candle. So you'll see on our altar here, we have 4 candles lit because the celebration of Kwanzaa started on December 26th. So we start on the left-hand side. The first candle was for December 26th. The next one, December 27th, December 28th, and voila, today is December 29th. So that's why you see 4 candles lit there. The other 3 become lit over the next 3 days. So day 1, oh, that was all the slides. The slide for all the principles there, but since it's so dark, you really can't see it. Day 1, the principle here, the Swahili word is umoja. Umoja means unity. And so striving for the ability to maintain unity in your family, in your community, in your nation, and in the race. Now, as I talk to you about these principles, for Kwanzaa, we're talking about in the African American community. And this celebration was created for the African American community because they had been beat down so much. It's celebrated not just in the US, but in any country where Africans were taken from their native land and put into servitude in that other country. Tom and I just went to South America. We found out that there were Africans that were brought from Africa to Ecuador, to Peru, to be servants, to be slaves there. Now, one of the interesting things we found out in Peru, because of the elevation, they didn't make good servants because they couldn't breathe when they were at 10,000 feet. They weren't used to that elevation. So they had to go get other European people and bring them in to be their servants. I thought that was pretty cool. But as a race, as a people, the African people have been put into servitude. And so this represents their ability to come together as a community. So for us as religious scientists, then we can look at, well, what does that say for us? What can we learn from their principles that are spiritual principles for us to take into our life? And is there any meaning at all? And I'll let you be the judge of that for yourself. So unity here. Striving to have unity in the family, the community, children, and race. To me, from a science of mind perspective, we look at this principle as our principle of unity, of oneness here. We know that we are all one human family. And so as one human family, we get to encourage each other to see the divine in one another, to see that God spark in each person, no matter who they are, where they came from, what they look like. We are each made from the divine. So I can hold space for the African Americans to celebrate this principle, and I can see value for myself in the unity of all humanity, recognizing that as a spiritual principle for myself. And I offer that to you as well. The second day of Kwanzaa, here's the principle. Since I can't pronounce it, I'll let you just look at it. It's a long word with lots of letters. And it stands for self-determination. This means to define and name ourselves, as well as to create and speak for ourselves. So when you think about that, the spiritual principle here that comes to my mind that I relate to is authenticity and speaking our truth. And in religious science, we talk about how we need to speak our truth. And what's true for me may not be true for you. What's my spiritual truth may be different for you. And so we each see what resonates with us And that's how we live our lives. We're not here as a congregation to tell you this is what you have to believe. That's part of the beauty of being open to all paths to God. And so recognizing this, we can allow for everyone to speak their truth, to know what is right for them and not say they are wrong. We're each individual expressions of the divine. And we're creating our lives through our words and through our thoughts. You'll often hear me say, what you think about, you bring about. So what are we expecting? Are we expecting good in our lives? Then that's what we'll get. If we're expecting things to go wrong, then that's what we'll get. So, as we look at self-determination, how are we going to create our lives here? What will we do with them? Day 3 of Kwanzaa, the Swahili word is ujima. This means collective work and responsibility. To build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and solve them together. So as a community, they're looking at helping and building one another up. We can look at it from the spiritual perspective of we are the human race. Are we here to help one another to grow as humans and in our humanity embrace our uniqueness and serve one another so that we can each be encouraged to live our best life possible? The spiritual principles of unity, oneness, and compassion come to my mind here. That we're all expressions of the one God. Day 4. The word is ujama. Ujama means cooperative economics. To build and maintain our own stores, shops, and businesses to profit together from them. So serving and building that community of African American businesses. Well, what's the bigger picture here? Serving and building each of our lives so that we have our own business. Can you see how that principle aligns with self-responsibility? I know some of you laugh at me and say, well, Reverend Rick, this is the church of perpetual responsibility because we're responsible for our lives. And that's what, to me, this principle is saying is we're responsible to create something. Let's get together and create it. So as a spiritual community, don't we want to get together and create the best life we have? The best that we can do for each other and encourage one another? Are we ready to give up limited thinking here and know and see the abundance of Spirit in our life all the time? Another thing that comes as a principle as I look at this is being honest and living in integrity in all you do. As they're talking about building the businesses together, it means not trying to take advantage of somebody, not trying to rip somebody off, but to make sure everyone gets their fair share, and that builds us together. Day 5 in Kwanzaa, the word is nia. Nia means purpose. To make our collective vocation the building and developing of community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. I'm reminded here about our goal at Centers for Spiritual Living to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. So in the African American community, they're looking at how can we raise ourselves up? How can we remind one another that we're important, that we have self-worth? And in our greater community, we can look at this and see that as spiritual beings, we have the ability to be successful. We have the ability to be more than what our limited thinking tells us we are. So awakening each other, That's part of the reason why we meet together on Sunday mornings, to remind each other who we are and that we have that ability as spiritual beings, that we are so much more. So encouraging each other here. Day 6, the word is kumbha. Kumbha means creativity. To do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. So taking what we've been given and making it even better because we've been here. Not hurting the earth, not hurting other people, but building up what we're doing, protecting our natural resources. We've talked about that this year. I hear the reminder here that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings, that our thoughts and our words are creative. And I'm reminded of the encouragement to do good and to be positive in all that we do. The spiritual principle for me with this is talking about it's done as you believe. Do you think you're making a difference in the world? Do you think your life has an effect on people around you? It does. And it's your choice whether that effect is going to be positive or whether it's going to drag people down. As spiritual people, we want to be able to encourage one another to live an even fuller life, to be able to give back to each other and to God through our living and our life. Day 7, Umani. Umani brings us to the principle of faith, to believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. For Science of Mind, this principle of faith leads me to believe in spirit, in the living God Almighty, and to see the divine in each one of us. You all are my teachers. You all teach me so much through how you live and what you do. You are my brothers and sisters of the human race. And so as we recognize that and our unity and oneness in it, we see how life can be even better as we encourage each other and have faith in one another. Knowing that God is our source, we can't fail. And we can birth the Christ consciousness within us each day. Part of this 7th day of Kwanzaa is also the giving of gifts. Gifts are given by the children and by the adults. Now, here's what's a little different for your thinking. The gifts are handmade. So we're not talking about going to Walmart and buying something and giving it to the kids. We're talking about being thoughtful and creating something with your own hands to express your love, your concern, your encouragement of the people in your family and in your community. What if we gave those kinds of gifts? And I know some of you do that now. And it's quite touching. Ernest Holmes says, "It is not in lavish gifts that we find true giving, but in the sweet simplicity of remembrance. In the kindly thought, the tolerant mind, the gentle act. Love alone can give love. Sympathy alone can sympathize. And only goodness can really do or be good." And he said that in 1929. What I gain as I look at Kwanzaa and the 7 principles of Kwanzaa and relate that to my spiritual life, I see that Kwanzaa is an outline for the potential and the possibility of life if we work together in harmony instead of against each other. I'm sure several of you have been in that kind of situation where you felt like the people around you were working against you. And life and the energy of life changes when we see ourselves cooperating and working together. That's a big message of Kwanzaa for me. To come together in my community, whatever that community is, whether it's Parker, whether it's the state of Colorado, whether it's CSL Parker, whatever I am relating to as my community, to come together and to encourage each other and be encouraged by each other. To have the faith and to see the divine in each one of us. To work together rather than working against each other. So I hope this gives you a little education and information about Kwanzaa and how these principles can relate to our spiritual lives, and that more is always possible when we open our hearts and our minds. Kwanzaa, along with celebrating these community values, also celebrate the bountiful harvest. So our altar that Linda created today has the fruits and vegetables here to represent the harvest. And as you heard Allie read, Kwanzaa means first fruits. So it's recognizing that God is giving us all that we have, and that the fruits of our labors are harvested here, and we can be grateful for them. You'll also see on most Kwanzaa tables the unity cup. So we all drink from the same cup. And that unity cup is important. You can see gifts on the Kwanzaa table because at the end, the seventh day, they're giving their handmade gifts to one another. The 7 candles we've talked about. So recognizing that all there is with Kwanzaa can represent and encourage us in our lives. We don't have to be African American, but we can look at that custom and we can say thank you. Thank you for showing us a higher way, a better way of living and of encouraging each other. This month, we have looked at Ratsu, the first Sunday, where we looked at the Buddha's enlightenment. These are all celebrations in the season of light. So the enlightenment of Buddha is the awakening of humanity that we're talking about with Kwanzaa. When we looked at solstice, and we looked at having the sun return and warm us again, we celebrated that light of the sun, and that light is within each one of us. We looked at Hanukkah, and we looked at the miracle of having oil for one day that lasted for 8 days. We can see that Spirit provides miracles for us all the time when we're willing to look for them. Last Sunday, we looked at Christmas and birthing that Christ consciousness within each of us. To know that there is good and that unconditional love can be birthed within us to share with the world. And now the principles of Kwanzaa, to build our community and to uplift one another. These are all part of this season of light. So I hope that as you leave here, you are encouraged by this to be able to know that there is truth in everything. And not one party, not one group has the only truth or all the truth. We gain it as we look at everyone and everything. The Kwanzaa table. The red, you'll see red, black, and green. You see it in the candles, you see it in the cloth. The red represents the blood that was shed by the people. As they were beat into servitude often, blood was shed, and so the red represents blood. Black represents the color of the skin of the African people. And green represents the harvest, the fruits that have been harvested here, the gifts that have been given. with this celebration and looking at this as well as each of the Sundays and the season of light that we have brought to you this month. It tells me that we are much more alike than we are different. That we are all one human race, one human family, and it doesn't matter the color of our skin, what our religion is, what our politics are, what our body style is. We're all one human race. We're all God in expression, each individual expressions of that divine. And as we recognize our unity, our oneness with one another, we can encourage each other. So your homework for this week, you knew it was coming, to share the light of spirit with someone this week. We've talked for 5 weeks here about season of light and the different ways light comes into the world. So share that light with someone you come in contact with this week. Here's some examples for you. It can be as simple as a smile. It can be a listening ear to someone who needs to express themselves. It can be a helping hand. Whatever it looks like for you that can be the light and share the light in the world, I encourage you to do that this week. What will you do to encourage that unity within all of humanity? It's up to you, and it's each of us on our own individual journeys. So bless you as you go out into the world, living and being that expression of the divine each and every day. Let us pray.